Is that right?
Hello, I can hear you
Have
just
I
fine.
done it?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Oh my God, this tech stuff drives me crazy. It gets me so uptight.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. Yeah,
I've
yeah,
just been
brilliant.
having a look at it again on my phone.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh my God, that was so long ago. It's ridiculous. It's like another lifetime.
And I will probably ask this later on, but yeah, it's sort of, what is it, 61 years now, isn't it? 1963, this came out. Um,
Did it? You said last time when we spoke I was 22 because I'm
yeah.
84 tomorrow.
Oh, yes, I was going to wish you a
My
happy birthday.
birthday
Yeah, yeah,
tomorrow, so I'm 84
yeah,
tomorrow. So,
yeah.
if you just subtract 22 from
Subtract that.
84,
Yes.
you've got it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's Yeah, I think to us as fans, we don't realize quite how much time has gone by, really. Um, so
How old are
okay, well, I
you?
think well, I'll be 40 on the 1st of May.
You look very young for 40. Yes.
Oh,
Yes, you're wearing
that's really
well.
sweet. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've got a lot of grey hairs, and the camera does pick them up these days.
It
Um,
doesn't look grey though. I don't know quite. It looks like a taupe colour,
wow.
but
Yeah.
not grey. Mine's on the sides.
Mm,
I've got grey, but
yeah.
I've worn quite all right. My hair's not been too bad actually,
Mm,
in terms of going grey or white or anything like that. And I had never had that problem.
mm. Oh, good, good. So I think if you're ready to make a start, we'll crack on if that's okay. Um, so I'm just going to begin the session, Irene, just by a little plug for this book that is coming out. A friend of mine is producing an Avengers quiz book, and it's got quiz questions from the entire run of the series, including the new Avengers.
Mm.
Joanna Lumley has written the foreword for it. It's an official book in cooperation with Studio Canal, who own the Avengers copyright. If people watching do want to get a copy of it, it's available pre-order now. It's the title is the Avengers Quiz Book, and it's on quotemedia.co.uk. Quote is QUOIT media.co.uk. I will post a link on the YouTube feed so people can see can see a link in the video as well. And so it's Roy Bettridge that is produced the quiz book, and for most Avengers fans probably know that he produced or was involved in producing the Stay Tuned charity Avengers books that came out last year and the previous year. So it's well worth a look. So please check it out. Okay, so right, so down to business then. So for those watching along, either two options: either just concentrate on the chat that we're having, or you can watch the episode as we talk. So if you have it on mute, and then we'll just press play. I'll do a little countdown from 5 to 0. And that will just use the episode to guide the conversation a little bit. It works either way, but it's just a nice way. If people do want to watch it along, then they can do so. So I'll just get the episode up. And if we pause on when the first A of ABC drops down, and then I will do the countdown, we'll get started. Okay. Okay, so right. Okay. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and play. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, Irene, the two actors that we see at the beginning of this episode.
Can I just
Doc-
correct you for a
yeah.
minute? My name
Oh, yeah.
is Irene.
Oh, Irene.
Yes, I don't pronounce it Irene. It's Irene.
Oh, Irene, I did.
Yeah, it's a very specific reason for that, that I insist on it being, that's how it used to be pronounced in the old days, right? It was Irene. It was never Irene. It was always Irene when the American circuit started to say Irene, and the Irish say Irene. But the proper pronunciation is Irene, and it has a much better ring to it, Irene Bradshaw, than Irene Bradshaw, you know.
Yes,
I mean, so I really insist on that pronunciation.
I agree. It's a very, very nice. And I think it's a better form of it. So it kind of just sort of I suppose a lot of people maybe at school sort of did call you Irene, but
well, they would, because I came from the Midlands. I came from Derby, and of course they called me Irene there, you know. But my father named me on his deathbed, because I was born 2 weeks after my father died. Right. And he said if it was a girl, I was to be called Irene Shara, after the pianist, who was a famous pianist at the time. And so when I came south, I thought, yes, that sounds, either I change my name completely for the theatre, or I insist on it being Irene. Yeah.
And it has a nice showbiz ring to it as well, I think.
It has a much better cadence to it, you know, than Irene, you know.
Yes, yes, it does. So I was just going to ask you about a couple of the actors that appear in the opening scenes of the episode. Donald Eccles as Dr. Ash, and Pauline Delaney as Elizabeth Bale. She's the helping the villains with the burglary of the golden eggs. Do you remember either the two actors? Did you encounter each other during rehearsals?
Yes, I did. I encountered Pauline Delaney and Mr. Eccles as well. Yes. I can't remember too much about it, to be honest with you, so I can't sort of enlighten you a great deal about it. I do remember recalling that I was either Pauline told me or somebody else told me that she was quite a big name in Dublin, at the Dublin theatre there. Yeah. And she came south she came this way to try and break into television and stuff. But she was quite a well-known actress in Dublin. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's quite a sort of timely episode. I think it's an episode that's become, unfortunately, quite timely with the COVID pandemic. The idea of a virus that's gotten loose.
Oh wow! So, yes. Of course. Yeah.
It's quite interesting how things become in fashion again. Like,
yes, several books apparently that were about the plague and different things became very, very popular during the pandemic as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So this, of course, is a bit more of what general audiences would, when they think of Avengers, they think of Honor Blackman, Diana Rigg. But originally, of course, the Avengers was very different. It had
very different, yeah.
With Patrick Macnee, obviously always being there, but being a sidekick to Ian Hendry's David Keel. And of course, you were in one of those first.
And also, the only female sort of attraction in it was Ingrid Hafner. She was the secretary. She was the secretary.
Yeah.
And so she wasn't an enormous presence like Ian Hendry was, and because Ian Hendry was, well, he was just real big time at that time, you know, as an actor. Such a good actor.
Oh yeah.
They always said he could turn on a sixpence.
Yes,
I don't suppose you know what that means, do you?
Well, I think he certainly had. I think you could get on the wrong side of him. I think. I don't think he would suffer fools gladly. I think if
no, he wouldn't. No, he wouldn't. But the phrase "turning on a sixpence," which a lot of directors used at that time, meant because you were in a set which was so small and so not the real thing in terms of being able to move properly. You had to make everything look as if it was real, but you were turning in such a small space. They said, you've got to learn to turn on a sixpence, dear. The minute you can do that, you've really nailed television. Yeah. It was a nightmare, absolute nightmare, trying to make everything look real when it was in such artificial circumstances.
Yeah. And of course the cameras were huge, bulky things, not like what we have now. And
they were on great big wheels and came zooming in at you, right up close to you. I was in a television series for the BBC called United. I was in that for, I think it was about, well, it had to be at least 9 months because I gave birth to twins in the last episode. So I had to be in it for at least 9 months. And that was a bi-weekly, twice a week. It was on at the same time as The Newcomers. The Newcomers was on the ABC, I think it was, and United was on BBC. And the things that you had to make look real when it was you know, you'd say you're going to eat some soup, right? Now, in a scene where you're eating soup, right? You've got a silver spoon, you put the spoon into the soup and you lift it to eat it, and the cameraman goes, no, it's reflecting on the camera lens. You can't do that. So what do? You know, you've got to find a way of making something which is really impossible, technically possible. And there's so many occasions like that where it happens. Well, it did happen. It doesn't happen now because everything is filmed now. I mean, everybody's spoiled to death these days. They really don't know what real work is. You know, it's sort of in those days. I mean, what you had to cope with was enormous in terms of technicalities and stuff on TV.
Because of course the Avengers in these days was done as live, basically a play that was filmed. You would do it in the order in which the scenes were in the script. So the rehearsal period must have been absolutely vital to even things like certain angles with things. Do you remember any rehearsal period? Maybe not the Avengers rehearsal periods, but what it was like to rehearse for live television?
I was lucky because I was doing my apprenticeship, if you like, because I'd come out of drama school. I was at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. I'd had a classical training, and the agent who wanted to take me on wanted to put me straight away into TV and films. And I said, no, I can't do that. I said, I've got to go into repertory and learn my trade. I've only had 2 years training, you know, I've got to find out a lot more about the business and how it works. So I was going off into various repertory companies and touring plays and things like that. So I managed to miss the live recordings because I was busy in the theatre.
Yeah.
But so by the time I came into doing television, it was no longer live, but it was as if.
Yeah.
So you couldn't go wrong, because if you went wrong, it just costs such an enormous amount of money to cut the tape and edit it, and you would never work again. So you had the same sort of pressure as if it was live, although it wasn't live.
Yeah,
the pressure was the same.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's why when you watch programs like The Avengers or Doctor Who, the William Hartnell stuff particularly, you will see fluffs but of course, unless it was a disaster, they wouldn't retake. So
yeah, I
it's so
remember
expensive.
on a Softly Softly task force that I did, that one of the young Juve actors that was in that, young man, he asked it at the end if he could have a retake for a bit that he wasn't happy about.
Yeah,
they wouldn't let him have it, and he was furious when he saw it, because for him it wasn't perfection, you see, and we're all looking for perfection in our profession.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've just seen your introductory sequence in the episode. Gordon Whitling plays your husband. Do you remember working with Gordon?
When I looked at it again, because I haven't seen it for years and years and years, and when I looked at it again, I remembered him because it jogged my memory. But if I hadn't looked at it, I couldn't have told you who he was or what he looked like or anything. I couldn't remember.
Oh yeah,
but it all came back. They always say that if you start to write your memoirs or something like that, you think you can't do it because you can't remember everything, right? But apparently once you start writing, all these memories come flooding back to you. That's what they say. I mean, I've never tried to write mine, so I wouldn't know. But I read that somewhere, and the same thing happened when I looked at this. I thought, oh yeah, I remember now. Yes, that's of course. But if I hadn't have watched it again, I wouldn't have remembered.
Oh yes, yeah. Because I imagine a lot of actors you will work with once, maybe twice if you're lucky, but you're on to another project, so the faces in your professional life are always changing, aren't they? So you don't really get to build strong bonds in a lot of cases.
Well, yes, I mean, that's why they say everybody who in the profession calls you darling, and everybody thinks that that's a very artificial thing to do. And it does sound artificial, but it's quite logical. It's because you meet them again somewhere down the road, and your brain is going, where was it? Where was it? I know I've worked with this one somewhere. You know, you're trying to come out, and you, hello, darling, because you can't remember the name. You know, so that's why that became such a thing with actors. You know, it was a substitute for not being quick enough to be able to remember the actor's name. But you know that you've worked with them, because you do have a tendency to run across the same people. I don't know how it works out like that. It's a sort of like kind of quite a magical thing, really, but it happens that way, that you meet people further down the road.
Yeah. One actor.
Sorry, I chat on too much.
Oh no, not at all. It's very very interesting to me. I did want to mention Robert Bernal, who plays Hiller. He's the henchman character in the episode, and you do have a little scene with him with Gordon as well. I just wondered what you thought of him as a heavy. I think he comes across as a bit of quite a nasty piece of work in this episode.
See, the one I was having a bit of a fight with, a tussle with.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. The only memory I've got of that is during the rehearsal. I think I was supposed to hit him with something, and it wasn't there, or something happened. I can't remember what it was now. And remember Honor shouting from the bottom, hit him with a coat hanger, hit him with a coat hanger. You know? This was during the rehearsal. Fortunately, when it came to do the take, everything went smoothly, but during rehearsal, for a minute, I obviously lost it and was coming out of it, you know, because the thing that wasn't there that was supposed to be there. And and I always remember her shouting from the bottom, hit him with the coat hanger, hit him with the coat hanger. But you asked me my opinion of what I thought of him as a heavy. Is that your question?
Well, yeah, that was well, yeah, it goes back to how you think this episode holds up. Really, do you think there's some really good actors in this episode? And I just wonder what you thought of some of the other performances in the episode.
Well, I thought Peter Arndt was absolutely brilliant, but then he was, he was a real class act, Peter Arndt,
yes,
as an actor. But yeah, the other thing I think I mentioned this once before was, and I can't find it because I can't get up steps ladders. I can't do that sort of thing, and I haven't seen anybody who I could ask to go up the step ladders and get them. But I know I've got somewhere a magazine that was sent to me from ABC saying that the Golden Eggs won the award for the best episode of that particular series.
Yeah, I think it was quite a popular one, and you can see, it's a very well put together episode. So I can well see it being a really good example of this season.
So of course, there were some very good actors in it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Don't want to blow my trumpet, but there were some. I mean, Peter Arndt, I worked with him once again somewhere. I can't remember whether it was before or after. I can't remember now.
Well, I'll come back to Peter a little bit later. I was just wondering what you thought of your character, because it's obvious that you have an interesting relationship with your husband, and that it's not maybe the happiest of marriages, and you want to get help for him, but I think there's a bit of fear of what will happen if you go to the hospital and that sort of thing. So I just kind of wonder how you thought your character, whether you find her sympathetic and that sort of thing.
Well, she was a bit sort of what was I? I mean, he was a bit sleazy, wasn't he? The safe cracker as a character, and obviously, if I was married to him, I had to sound a bit sort of cool, blimey, and a bit, off and that sort of thing. But I was always trained to believe that you'd never played that. What you did was you always found something which was really likable about a character like that. If you fell into the mistake of playing that, it becomes a very, very one-dimensional character, because nobody's just one thing. We're all multi-dimensional beings, and if you're looking for getting a fully rounded character, then you look for the opposite in it. You look for the bits that's kind and compassionate, and you don't play sleaze all the time, because if you do that, then it's just, well, it's not character. It's not a character.
So when it comes to developing characters, your starting point is the good qualities, and you sort of layer your character up like that.
Yeah, you have to play the opposite. If you play it as it is written, in other words, you have to do the writer's job for them in a way, because the writers very, very rarely give you that. You have to find that for yourself.
When it came to TV of this period, were you able to make many suggestions, or did you have to do what was in the script and that was kind of it?
No, you would get the script, and your first impression would be what was written, and then you would sort of say to yourself, well, how do I make this more interesting? How do I make it that this is believable as a character? Not that I was that good at it at that age. I was only 22. I'd hardly even, got started, but I still had all my drama training to sort of fall back on, and all the good directors that I'd worked with at drama school, and all the hints that they had given me. And don't forget, when I left drama school, television wasn't a huge market at that point, and we didn't have any training at drama school in camera work in those days. We were pure theatre.
And so, speaking of directors, Peter Hammond directed this episode. Of course, he also directed one for the Mortuary, your first episode. Do you remember Peter at all? Do you remember Peter Hammond?
Of course I do. He was a very sensitive director, highly sensitive man, and something of a well, I hesitate to say the word genius, but he was very highly respected as a director in the business by other directors. I mean, he did some fabulous work, really fabulous work.
So it's likely that your agent would have put you forward for the first Avengers, and maybe then Peter would have remembered you when it came to the Golden Eggs, because I think a lot of it's kind of who you know and who you like to work with, isn't it? I think a little bit back then.
Yeah, I think in those early days, like I did when I came down from Perth Rep, I know I came down with the object in mind, with the objective of trying to break into television and film. Because I thought to myself, well, I left drama school at 19. I was one of the youngest people to ever go there. I was 16 when I auditioned. I was 17 when I started my training. And I was 19 when I was out on the road touring with the Arts Council of Great Britain, with a Shakespearean play and an Ibsen play. And so I was, when I came down to London from Perth Rep to try and break into television and films, the first thing was to get an agent. That was the first thing that you had to get, because if you didn't have an agent, you didn't know where to start. You didn't know where to begin. And so there was I think it was Spotlight or something like that. You joined Spotlight because you had to have your photograph in Spotlight, because that was what all the directors used and all the casting directors used. So when an agent rang up and said, I've got a client, Irene Bradshaw, I think she'd be right for this part, would you see her? They would say, what's her page number in Spotlight? And then they'd go to the page number and they'd have a look, and they'd go, oh, well, maybe, yeah, well, okay, send her along, we'll have a look, right? And I think one of the first things I got was a film with Peter Sellers called The Waltz of the Toreadors. And that, I must have found an agent by then, because I remember being sent along for this audition to Pinewood. And John Gilliman, who was a huge director, I remember him auditioning me. And I remember him saying, I want you to do this exercise. What you do is you're sitting in that chair, and then suddenly you hear your master's arriving in the courtyard there, and you're all excited about it, and I want you to run over to that window and look out of the window and look all excited because the master is home, right? I remember that. And I remember speaking to somebody afterwards, some technician of some kind, I think it was, I can't remember what it was. And I said to him, oh, I hope I get this. I do hope I get this. I don't know what I'll do if I don't get it. And he said, if I find anything out, give us your phone number and I'll give you a ring and let you know. And I think he did, actually. And then the agent phoned me up and told me I'd got it. And then she quoted the money and she said, would that be all right? And I'd never heard of so much money in my life. And I could hardly speak to reply. You know, I just went, yes, I think that'll be all right. Yeah, so that was my first experience of film.
Yeah.
And I obviously had an agent then, and I had lots of you know, not really great parts, but they were present, you know, and I got a contract and got paid for it, and that, and they all came through agents. So I presume that that's something of the same must have happened there.
Yeah.
That I got put up for that. Although we were always told, I think I learned this in repertory, talking to other actors. They said, what you do is you write to a director that you've worked with in the theatre who has now broken into television. And you ask them to give you a job, right? Because if they've already worked with you, they know that you're reliable.
Yeah.
And so one did that until one's contacts ran out. And then you think, well, I don't know what I'm going to do now. And I think I remember going along with Julian Holloway, Stanley Holloway's son, to do some extra work, just to keep going, you know, which was actually unheard of. You shouldn't, if you were a proper actor, you weren't supposed to do that. But we did it because we wanted to see what was going on in the business. In the business.
Yeah. On the film you mentioned, did you encounter Peter Sellers at all?
Sorry?
Did you encounter Peter Sellers on that film at all?
Oh, yes.
You did?
Yes, he actually gave me his seat to sit in.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, the day we were leaving, I had some extraordinary velvet pants that my mother had sent me. And we went on set to look at the rest of it until we were being called for our taxis to take us to the station or take us home or wherever. And he said, I like your trousers. Where did you get those from? And I said, oh, my mum sent them to me. And so he started talking to me and he asked me what I'd done. And I told him about repertory and touring, and he got very interested in. And he said, I want you to sit in my seat. I said, oh, I can't do that. No, I'm terribly sorry. That's not right. I can't do that. He said, I would really like you to sit in my seat. I enjoyed talking to you. I want you to tell me what else you've done. And so I was telling him all the different jobs that I'd done. And then somebody called my name and said, your taxi's here. I was off, and that was it. Yeah. He was very, very nice.
Oh,
he
good.
was a bit of, at breakfast time, he was a bit of a prima donna, though.
I can imagine.
Because he used to, what I remember him was shouting about being kept awake by some cockerel that crowed in the morning. And I thought, well, how do you expect It's like, just stop a cockerel from crowing. I couldn't get any sleep. So, oh yeah, he was a bit of a prima donna.
Oh yeah,
but very much a gentleman. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You had we've just sort of seen recently. We've seen your fight with, well, not your fight, but your encounter with Honor Blackman. There is a bit of a tussle with Honor when you are packing your bag to leave. What was it like working with Honor Blackman?
Oh, I loved Honor. I really loved her. I have 3 memories of Honor. The first one was when I was 14 and I was at the Joseph Wright School of Art in Derby, and we had some free periods of where we could go and do what we wanted. And I used to bunk off and go to the cinema. And I watched her in a film called No Orchids for Miss Blandish. And I was mesmerized. I thought she was the most gorgeous creature. I just sat there and I thought, my God, what a beautiful woman, right? And then the next time I met her, she'd gone through a pretty bad time in her career. I think she'd been out of work for about years, actually. And she was married to, what's his name? Maurice Kaufman. And Maurice Kaufman got a lot of work. He only played smallish roles, but character roles, and he was always in work. He was never out of work. And she came to see somebody in a play that I was in at the Cheltenham Everyman. And she went to see him. And when I came off stage, I went up into my dressing room and she was sitting in my dressing room. And I thought, my God, Honor Blackman, no orchids for Miss Blandish. She's sitting in my dressing room, you know. And apparently she'd got the wrong dressing room. She thought she'd got his dressing room and she got mine. And then the next time I met her was on The Golden Eggs.
Yeah.
And she had that, we had a fabulous memory of coming in. We were coming into work and we're coming into the car park at White City, I think it was. No, it couldn't. I don't know where it was. Anyway, we were in the car park and she says, I must tell you, I'm bursting to tell somebody. I've just been for an audition, which if I get it, it will change my whole career. And it was Pussy Galore.
Yeah, Goldfinger. Yeah. Yeah. So you were one of the first people that knew she had the role.
Yeah, she said, I can't hold it in, I've just got to tell somebody.
Yeah. No, it's lovely, isn't it? Lovely, you know, that she would confide that in you and have that, you know, it and
I already had that sort of what do you call it when you or inspired by somebody, you know, right from being 14 in the cinema.
Yeah.
To be her somebody who she confided that moment in at that moment was really, really, really exceptional moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. I wanted to ask, because your character is written out halfway through the episode. She decides to leave. I think she's worried that the villains will track her down. Do you, when you're creating a character, do you kind of think what their life might be after, you know, what happens to them later on? Do you kind of carry a character with you, and you sometimes think about, oh, I wonder what this character would be doing, or that character? Do you get invested to that level, or is it just kind of you do it and then you kind of you know, let it lie?
Well, in the early days, I used to find it very difficult to let go of a character, and then I realized that for survival's sake, you couldn't carry those characters around with you. You couldn't, because especially when you're young and impressionable like that, you know, I mean, I remember opening my wardrobe when I was very, very young and had a sort of mixed bag of clothes. And I would sort of think to myself, now, who shall I be today? You know, what, because I didn't know who I was. You know, I was too young to have developed into, you know, a real sort of character. I was so too young to have developed that far. So if you let a character take hold of you, they always say you hang your character up with your wardrobe, with your costume, sorry, not your wardrobe, with your costume. You hang it up with your costume, because if you take it home with you, it's going to drive you crazy. You know, you're in it for the time that you're doing it, right? And that is full immersion while you're doing it. But after that, let it go. You have to let it go.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, some really, really big actors have got into real psychological problems through not being able to let it go.
I mean, you hear of actors that stay in character all the time on a film, and you know, they stay in the wardrobe, they answer you as the character's voice, and that must be very difficult to. It can't be healthy. Whether it makes you a better actor for that role, I'm not sure, but certainly it doesn't seem like a healthy thing to.
It isn't healthy. No, it isn't. It isn't. It's actually ruined some people's lives. You know, they can't because they couldn't. Yeah, I'm not going to mention names, but there's a couple that I've got in my brain who I know that they couldn't drop it after the film was finished. They couldn't drop it and just sent them loop de loop.
Yeah, I can understand how it could get into your head and kind of take over a little bit. Yeah. So we mentioned we're now in some nice scenes with Peter Arney as Redfern, the villain of the piece. You worked with him twice, you said, with Peter. What are your dominant memories of Peter?
Oh dear, I don't know really. It was a real character. He gave me a lift home from, I can't even remember what the show was now. I know we were somewhere miles out at some studio somewhere, and I was trying to. I think we finished both at the same time, and he said, "Do you want to lift back to London?" And I said, "Yes, thanks very much." And he had this little open sports car, and he gave me a lift back to London. And he was a real character. Yeah, very, very funny man. But as an actor, he was just a classic actor. He was the bee's knees. Very good actor.
I think his performance has a great energy to it, and it's quite layered in terms of his use of the musical boxes and the glasses he has with a little magnifying. He's always playing with something. He's always bringing something extra, and I'm sure that would have been a lot of him bringing that to the role. Yeah.
Because all of us, you see, had our background in theatre. So I mean, Anna, she before she became a rank star, she came up through repertory companies and stuff like that. You know, I mean, we all that was our whole training, and Peter Arne would have been another one like that, you see.
And I wanted to ask, when did you know you wanted to be an actress? Was it any acting in the family, or what made you pursue it?
Well, what happened was when I was a child, my mother put me and my two brothers against the wall and said, I've got to work hard to get you to what you want to be in life. And so I need to know what you want to be now, right? My father was a musician. And I said, oh, I want to be a dancer, because I was going for dancing lessons at the time. And my next brother said, I want to be a musician. And my other brother said, I want to be a man in a white coat. We didn't know what a man in a white coat was. It turned out he was a radiographer in the end. But, but she pushed us right from the word go, all three of us, you know, and she never stopped going to the mayor of the city, well, it was Lady Mayoress, to get us the right sort of grants, or to get us this, or to get us that, you know. And she fought for it. And when I was at art school, whenever we did the plays, I was always cast in the leading role. So I would say it started the minute I was born, I would say, because I can remember using our old air raid shelter when everybody was out and I was left on my own, and my mother was at work and my brothers were out playing. I'd get on top of this air raid shelter and I'd perform to an imaginary audience. So I think I think I was just born that way.
Yeah.
You know, and I was always given the leading roles at school. And then because I was always late for school, they gave me the job of reading the Bible at assembly in the morning. Well, I was always on time for that. And then I used to come down with such force on all the kids and reading the Bible that they'd say, oh, she makes it so interesting, can't she do it every morning? And so they gave me as a job. And then other schools found out about it, and I was hired out to the other schools to wake them up as well. So I have to say, I think it was just always there.
Yeah. Just in your DNA, basically. Yeah.
Well, yes, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I do have sort of funny history in my mother's side where theatre did play a very strong role in the Nottingham theatre. Yeah. So it was there. It was there.
So
it's too long a story to go into.
Oh, yeah. Because it's always an interesting question, because sometimes acting sometimes is seen as obviously it's a difficult profession, and to have work constantly. So sometimes people will say their parents were really against them being an actor and they wanted them to do lots of other things. But
oh no, my mother was Gypsy Rose Lee. You know, get her on the stage.
Yeah.
It was yeah. She fought very hard for all three of us. Yeah.
Yeah, she sounds really really lovely. Yeah. I just want to go back to your first episode, Avengers, just to tick off a couple of things, if I may. Remember we mentioned Ingrid Hafner.
Oh yes.
Did you encounter Ingrid on the episode?
I did, yes, but I really can't. All I can remember was we rehearsed in some really cold church hall somewhere. That's all I can remember. And I can remember Ingrid, I can see her face now, but I can't really remember too much about. She was the secretary, wasn't she? She
did 19 episodes of the series, so she was the only female character that reoccurred like that. And of course, everybody knows who's watching this that the episode doesn't exist anymore. It was one of the majority of the first series doesn't exist anymore. Would you like to see it? Would you be interested in seeing it? Should it turn up one day?
Yes, sure, I would.
Yeah.
You think it might?
Well, they did find one episode called The Tunnel of Fear, a few years ago, so it's not dried up entirely, the possibility. But given the amount of years that have gone by, it becomes less likely, I suppose, because of film, like anything, will deteriorate, and how it's stored, and whether somebody just throws it out thinking it's valueless. So there's always a possibility and hope, I think, for these shows. There's always lots of things that seem to be found. You know, I think they have a missing, believed, wiped event every year at the South Bank, and it's always shows that have come back from Africa, or you know, all sorts of weird places. So it's always possible. But I suppose when you were making TV back then, you didn't have any sense that it would be broadcast, or you know, you kind of did it and you kind of forgot about it. You wouldn't think that 60 years time you'd be talking about the show, would you?
Never in a million years would you have thought. I wouldn't have thought that. It was the same with when I did Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, the film. My agent at the time said, you can either, what was it? She said, you can either take a fee, a flat out buyout fee, or you can take a lower fee and get royalties or something later on. She said, if I were you, I would take the buyout fee. She said, I don't think this film will go anywhere. And it's shown on television about 5 times a year, you know, I mean, but you see, the agent was only interested in their 10%. So, of course, if they got 10% of your higher fee, then they got more of a 10%. So, of course, she talked me out of taking a lower fee and maybe getting royalties later on, because it wasn't in her interest, you know.
No, I know some actors do get checks still for repeat fees.
I do.
For TV.
I do. Yeah, I get.
I think somebody said they got a 1p check through recently, and it was obviously the postage. They got a check for 1 pence recently.
the check is worth more than that.
Well, exactly, yeah. So it's quite funny that, you know, these drips and drabs seem to come in for the door. But
I know, we've all had that. We used to decorate our dressing rooms with them. Yeah.
Ah, right.
We used to pin them up on the dressing room.
So you then returned to the Avengers with Murdersville.
Oh yeah.
So this is very much at the height of the Avengers popularity. It's doing very well in America. It's a filmed series, so was it nicer to work on film rather than videotape?
Well, it certainly took the pressure off, yes, because you didn't have that thing hanging over your head that if you screwed up in any way and you messed it up, you'd never work again, and you knew that. Nobody would employ you if you screwed up. You couldn't. You just couldn't.
No.
And because I remember, I think it was in a Softly Softly Task Force, I had a makeup woman or a wardrobe woman or something was supposed to between scenes be ready to put some blood in my eye, right near my eye. I said, "No, you will make sure you're there, won't you? You will make sure." She said, "Don't worry, I'll be there." Of course, well, she wasn't. I had to do it myself. You know, because I was the one that would have taken the hit.
Yes, exactly.
For not having appeared. So I had to do it myself. God, did she look sheepish at the end of that one?
Yeah. I think there's a wonderful quality to the black and white Avengers in that they're not as polished as the film ones. But I think the black and white gives them a very good quality. It's there's something about black and white that makes I think it's more dramatic in a way, isn't it? So in terms of the stylistic.
Yeah, there's something about, I mean, it's like when you watch the old black and white movies now, they have, I mean, the lighting is so fantastic. The quality technically is superb, absolutely superb. I'm absolutely astonished when I look at some of the old black and white movies and compare it with what's going on today, real slapdash stuff. Some of the stuff that goes on today, unless you get something that's had an enormous amount of money poured into it, and even then you can't guarantee it. The sound is dreadful, and I don't know. I don't know what they do with them at film school anymore. I really don't.
I think one of the things that a lot of actors I speak to say that they miss the rehearsal time, and that now you just turn up, do your thing, meet the actor on the set. There was something nice about developing a relationship, saying, right, I'll try this, try that. What do you think of this? And I think that is an element of the performance is gone, I think.
Yeah.
And
yes, because you just called in for that bit, and you've only got, a lot of the time you've only got the pages for that bit.
Well,
you haven't got the whole script.
That's right. And I think something like this episode, the Avengers, it wouldn't look as good, I think, if it was in color. I think there's something about the black and white that gives, because of course you're talking about a small set, a small studio, number of sets. The black and white, I think, helps to give everything a bit of more of depth and scale, I think. What do you think of the look of the episode?
What do I think of the look of the episode of
the golden eggs? So
the golden eggs.
Yeah.
Well, it looks a bit, I don't know, because the copy you sent me wasn't a very good print, because, as I said, the only one I've got is on VHS, and I had a fire here in this building and I lost nearly everything, and I managed to save a few things, but I have nothing to play it on anymore, so I don't even know whether that's a good print or not. But I think the one you sent me is not a fabulous print.
It's one of those things that does need more restoration done to it. The print is, kind of what it is, and unfortunately, but it's just the source of that they've got for it. But I think it looks pretty good on the DVD copy I'm watching now. So right, sort of. So I will see if I can find you a better copy of it. But I think that the production design is very good, and certainly the outdoor scenes, or well, supposed to be outdoor, but we're in the studio with the outside the junk metal yard, and Honor has a fight in the yard. I think that's very, very good. So it doesn't let itself down by any means in any part of the episode, I think. So when it came to doing Murdersville, were you what are your key memories of that? Because of course it's a very famous village in which it was shot, Albury Village, which is used. It's been in the Dirty Dozen, Dead Man's Treasure, which is another Avengers episode. Do you remember being on location for that one?
I can remember that. Yeah, I can remember it very, very clearly.
Yeah. And of course the famous or infamous dunking scene when Diana Rigg is tortured. I think you said you remember seeing that happen.
Yes. Of course, it was a double. It wasn't her being dunked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it very clearly.
Yeah. I think it was Sid Child who was the stunt double for Diana Rigg, and she was saying that the director didn't like her going under the water, so although she could hold her breath for longer and she would signal when she wanted to come up, the director didn't like it and always brought her out quicker than it was required, because he was very worried about about her, which I guess is kind of is very nice, because you hear a lot of stories where directors just want to get the shot, and sometimes that results in accidents happening and things of that nature. Because it was Robert Asher directed the episode. Do you remember Robert at all?
Robert Asher directed the episode.
Yeah, Murdersville. Yeah.
No, I don't remember too much about them. I remember Sheila Fern, and I remember Colin Blakely.
Mm-hmm. And what was Colin?
Because Colin was such a fantastic actor as well. Because I did the scene with Sheila Fern, didn't I?
You did, yes.
Yeah, did it together. Yeah.
So she was nice to work with, it sounds like.
She was easy to work with. Yeah. She was very, accomplished actress. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And we talked about the village last time, and that it was I looked at some of the history of the village, and I couldn't find anything to do with witchcraft. I could find in the medieval days it was famous for alchemy, turning metals into to gold, and there was sort of these sort of
alchemy was was thought of as witchcraft.
Well, yes, exactly. So what you were,
it was considered to be witchcraft.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
you had to have some sort of relationship with otherworldly forces to be able to achieve anything at all in alchemy. And everybody was trying to, well, everybody, but it was very, very popular in medieval times. But then it became sort of something that only witchcraft could, because it was against the church, and of course the church was authority and everything, and so.
So the most famous person I could find was Sir Guy de Gravel, and he was a well-known alchemist at the time. But yes, that was in the medieval days, and it's one of those locations that pops up a lot in films and TV, and it's a bit of a like a holy land for Avengers fans. They're always sort of going, and sometimes even with some of the cast members to the and crew to the place. I was wondering just about some of your other works. You did an episode of Compact, and there was an actor in it called Francis de Wolf. Do you remember him at all?
Francis de Wolf.
Yeah,
I remember the name.
Yeah,
and I remember the director of that episode was Via Lorimer, wasn't it?
Yes,
yeah, because I remember sending him my picture and asking him if there was any work for me, and he thought my picture was very, very charming and sweet, and he gave me this very small role in it. But I really can't remember anything about Francis de Wolf. I can't really remember anything about Compact, to be honest with you.
It was obviously a little guest role, wasn't it? In and out sort of thing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it wasn't much. I think it was because I think I was before I hardly even got started. I think it was when I'd just come down from Perth Rep and was sending my photographs to everybody, all the directors, to try and get some work. And he obviously wasn't going to give me too big a role because he didn't know whether I was any good or not, did he?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I suppose the same with the episode of Top Secret that you did. I mentioned that.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember that one?
I remember. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Top Secret. Wasn't I a South American widow in that?
I can. Oh, I'll check in a second. But the reason why I was interested in it was it had a couple of Avengers connections, and that William Franklin did a couple of Avengers episodes, and he was one of the main people in that one. And also Patrick Cargill, who did some Avengers as well. But you remember doing the episode, I take it.
I do, and I remember what's his name, the first one you mentioned?
Oh,
Franklin.
William Franklin. Yeah.
William Franklin. Remember in rehearsals, I remember this really, really well. I rehearsed with this in the scene, and I was doing pretty well at it. And then for some reason, I got a bit thrown by his fame, right? And he came up to me after during rehearsal. He said, "Look, you're a very good actress." He said, "Now don't lose your confidence just because you're in the presence of, somebody who's a name. You carry on doing what you were doing."
Yes.
Because he realized I was about to blow it because I got overcome by the fact I was in the presence of somebody who was a big star,
Yeah.
And I never forgot that, because he was so kind to the way he put me back on track,
Oh yeah. I mean, I've done an event with last year with Robert Wagner, and he deliberately fluffed a few takes because he had an actor that was quite nervous, and just to sort of make him kind of feel more relaxed. So he thought, well,
kind man.
if the big star has some problems, I feel more confident, and then it just flowed after that. So that was yes. Your character in that episode is credited as Senora Domingo.
That's right. Yeah, and obviously the reason why I was cast in that, I mean, I was I must have been about 22, 21, 22, and I looked 28. I looked older when I was younger, and then I looked younger when I was older. So I mean, it was really difficult to cast me, because I never really looked the age I was at any time. And I remember I had very, very oily skin, and when I was rehearsing underneath the lights, it all the oily skin started to. And when I went to makeup, they said, "No makeup, perfect. That's it. That's what we need." So I was very disappointed because I didn't get any makeup, But I just looked it, I just looked the role, and that was why I was given that, It was funny because I seem to spend my time playing foreigners. I looked Italian, I looked French, I looked Spanish, South American, because I had that kind of look. So I never got to play English very often at the beginning there until I managed. I tell you, the person who did it for me, there was a director I was at drama school with called Vivian Matalon. He became a huge Broadway director, and he broke into television and as a director, and he cast me in, I think it was an episode of Z-Cast, and it was the first English role I'd had.
Right.
And the minute he cast me as an English person, the Italians and the French and the South Americans and the Spanish, it all dropped, and then I started to get English roles, But up until that point, nobody saw me as English.
Did you prefer it when you were kind of a bit more playing? Did you like playing English, or did you kind of like to do? Did you ever find yourself sort of pigeonholed? You were saying about foreign roles, but then did you find yourself a bit sort of...
Don't talk to me about pigeonhole. I mean, the whole profession was about pigeonholes. I mean, you would have thought that casting directors haven't got any imagination whatsoever, because all they did was put you down on a list. This one plays policeman. This one plays, horse. This one plays, and every time a character came up that was like that, that's what you got cast in. That's not what you went into the business for, especially when you had a classical training. You did not go into the business to be pigeonholed, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
That's what happened. There, later on, there were a few casting directors that became a little bit more sort of creative and took big chances on casting,
Yeah.
But in those early days, they weren't.
Well, I suppose, as you said, like you had to hire actors that could do live TV, or as live TV, you went for the reliable actors. So I suppose the casting directors had to play it safe, because they had to know that who they picked could do it. So I suppose
they knew they could play that role.
They kind of played it safe, sort of deliberately, I guess. But
everybody was playing it safe. They didn't take any chances, and the ones who did take chances, of course, were the ones who were capable of thinking outside the box, and they were capable of making really interesting work, doing really interesting work.
Oh yeah. You mentioned Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde earlier. I wanted to mention that to you because the director, Roy Ward Baker, did a lot of Avengers and things. Yes.
Brilliant man. Really brilliant man. I remember when I went along for the audition for that, I was playing Fairy in pantomime at the Golders Green Hippodrome. And they didn't have any way of getting across to the other side of the stage other than going out through the back door, out in the street, opening the door at the other end and making your entrance again on the other side. And it was snowing, and I was in this ballet tutu. I was in my 30s and going back up onto high points in my mid-30s. And the snow started to come down, and I was covered in snow. And of course, I caught this terrible cold when I was called to go for this interview / audition with Roy Ward Baker for Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. And by that point, I was so full of cold that I was as deaf as a post. I couldn't hear properly because my ears were all bunged up. And I went in, and Roy Ward Baker was there with Brian Clemens. And Brian Clemens said to me, "Sit down." I think that's what he said, "Sit down." And I thought he said, "Turn round." And I was spinning on this. He said, "What are you doing?" I was nervous as well, you see. So what with being deaf and nervous, I just started spinning on the spot. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "You said turn around." He said, "No, I said sit down." And I sat down, and as I sat down, I burst out with this laugh. He said, "Could you do that all the time?" I said, "What?" He said, "That laugh." I said, "Well, yes, of course, I'm an actress. Of course I can do it all the time." And he turned to Ward Baker and he said, "She'd be right for Yvonne."
Yeah.
And I got that on the basis of that laugh.
Yeah. Oh,
and it was only because I was so nervous, that I laughed like that. This real deep sort of, lavatory drain laugh, And of course, every single appearance that I made on the film, I was practically having to do that laugh, you know. And I remember Albert Fennell coming on set, and he came up to me and he said, God, I do admire you. He said, I don't know how you do that, you know, because the thing is you've got the clapperboard there. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. The last thing you feel like doing is laughing, right? And it's the countdown, and then it's go, and you've got to do it straight away, right?
Yeah.
And they stood there for ages watching me do it time and time and time again, you know. And Fennell said, I just don't know how you do that. I can't imagine how you managed to do that.
Did you quite like Albert Fennell? Was he?
What?
Did you quite like Albert?
He was a lovely bloke. Yeah.
Because of course he's always considered to be the silent partner in the Avengers series. So a lot of people have stories about Brian, but not so many about Albert. So that's nice to hear a little bit about him.
About Albert for a change, yeah.
And of course, Brian Clemens wrote 2 of the 3 of your Avengers episodes, your first and your last, Murdersville.
Yeah, so he knew me from the first one. Yeah.
Well, was he quite sort of around a lot on the film?
He was always on the set. Yeah. Oh
yeah.
Kept a close eye on what was going on. Yeah.
Because there's very few writers left from the Avengers, and I was speaking to one recently who said that basically every script that a writer did, Brian would, be very involved in shaping them. So, but although Brian is not credited on lots of episodes, he did co-write and contribute a lot to other writers' work.
Oh right, I didn't know that.
So I can imagine him being around a lot.
Oh yes, he definitely kept his eye on everything that was going on. One of the other things that was quite extraordinary about that was the actor's name. He played my husband in United, and of course we've been married and had twins together on United. And then the next time we met, he was playing a sailor and I was playing a whore, a Victorian whore. And he came out of the studio and I said, hello, sailor, we were married in another life, you know. And he went, and that's what I mean about meeting another actor further down the line, you know. I mean, we worked for 9 months together. What was his name? He played the sidekick to A Touch of Frost.
I'm just looking at the cast list for United. Was it John Lyons?
Johnny Lyons.
Yeah.
That's Johnny Lyons. Yeah, he played my husband in United, and he played a sailor in Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde.
Another cast member in United, Jeremy Burnham. Did you encounter Jeremy at all?
Oh yeah, I knew Jeremy Burnham quite well. Yeah. I actually ended up living in his flat at one point. When I was younger, because I was going around with Robin Culver, and I was looking for somewhere to live, and he said, I'll ask Jeremy if he's got, because he used to have a huge flat in the Priors on Hampstead Heath. It was an enormous flat, and I had a room there for a while. That's what brought me up to North London, because I was always in South London before.
Oh, right, yeah. Because there was a very big Avengers convention for the 50th anniversary down in Chichester, and lots of cast, lots of crew, and Jeremy Burnham was one of the guests, and I did have a brief little chat with him and got a couple of things signed by him, and he seemed to be a lovely person, and he also answered a few questions I had via email as well, sort of years later. So yeah, he seemed to be a really nice guy. Just to sort of finish off on the Avengers, we haven't mentioned Patrick McNee.
Oh, how
Yeah.
could we not mention him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your impressions of Patrick?
Patrick was the perfect gentleman. There didn't come more gentlemanly than him. I remember on that first Avengers that I did with Malou Pantera. What was it called? One for the Mortuary.
One for the Mortuary, yes.
Yeah. Remember that don't know how it came about, but Patrick and Ian invited me and Malou to go out for dinner, and Patrick brought me home in a taxi and kissed my hand and thanked me for a very pleasant evening, and was absolutely the perfect gentleman. And I thought to myself, goodness me, that's really a lovely memory to have. Somebody who was as gentlemanly as him. And then the second time I met him was on the Golden Eggs. And we talked quite a lot about how, I think he either worked in Canada or America. I can't quite remember. I think it was probably America. And he was saying that in America, it didn't matter if you did an extra work one day. You could be doing extra work one day and then been playing the leading role the next. But in this country, it was a no-no. It was like celebrities wouldn't, at the beginning, wouldn't accept commercials. It was a no-no. You didn't take commercials. If you were a proper actor, you didn't take commercials. That was considered to be, and you didn't do extra work. That was considered to be, So we talked a lot about that, and we talked a lot about his wife. He just recently married, and she'd gone to the States, I think, to try and make her way there for a while. And then I met him on Murdersville.
Yeah.
And my one memory, well, not my one memory, but my most powerful memory was watching him do a shot in the studio as if he'd come out of the sea, right? So you got a long shot of him in the sea. That was a long shot. And then they wanted a close-up, but they wanted it in the studio. And of course, there's no sea in the studio, right? So it was at the side of the camera, and the props person got a bottle of water and doused his head with water, and then it came up in front of the camera as if he'd just come out of the sea, right?
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I thought, wow, that's television acting. That really is, to make something look real.
Yeah.
When somebody's just been pouring a bottle of water over your head, to make it look like you've just come out the sea. That stuck in my mind so much.
I'm just wondering if that was something that they deleted from the episode, because as Patrick is noticeably not in the episode that much. It's more of a Diana Rigg episode. And as far as I'm aware, there's not a scene where he gets wet that I remember, but it might be something they cut out possibly. Did you meet Diana Rigg on the episode?
Yes, I did. Yeah. She was very sociable. Yeah, very sociable. I can't quite, we were sitting on our bit, on our set bit, and she came over to have a chat. And, very intelligent woman and wonderful actress, because in those days it was very, very difficult, you know, to make the transition between theatre and camera work. Very difficult, because they're two different styles completely.
Yeah.
Totally different. And she had it to a T. I saw her in lots of theatre shows after the Avengers, and she was brilliant on stage.
Oh,
absolutely brilliant.
I did see her in a couple of plays, and yes, mesmerizing to watch. She always had a bit of a love-hate relationship, with maybe emphasis on the hate, with things like the Avengers and the Bond film she did. I think she felt that it kind of sort of took away from the work that she might have considered to be more serious. And she
I think it's a shame, because it happens to a lot of very, very good actors, people like Brian, what was his name? Not Brian Blessed. What's the guy that's the very tall guy that used to play really dumb people in the Carry On films?
Oh, not Breslaw.
Breslaw, yes.
Breslaw, yes. Breslaw,
yeah. Fantastic actor. Absolutely fantastic actor. Gets totally stereotyped. I mean, it's soul destroying. Absolutely soul destroying, because that's not what actors go into the business for. And then they forget, as time progresses, they're so busy trying to earn a living that they get stuck with being stereotyped. It's the same with what's the one? Oh, stop messing about. That one.
Oh, Kenneth Williams.
Kenneth Williams. Yeah. Brilliant guy. Absolutely brilliant. But gets stereotyped, because that's what the audience want. That's what they get stuck with. And it really plays with their mind, their brains, because they're not using all the different parts of themselves, you know. And they're just forced into this one dimension. They're forced into it. And by necessity, really.
Oh yeah, you can understand why people have a complex relationship with certain roles or periods in their life, because it must be very frustrating, really. There's probably things that you value a lot more than, say, the Avengers that we're talking about now, but of course people, you know, are only interested perhaps in the Avengers or something else, where you would ideally like to also be talked about for this or that, I imagine.
Well, I mean, you know, you're here on this earth to experience yourself in all the complexities that you are. And if you get stuck with I think that's one of the reasons why I went into teaching, because I just, in the end, it just became mindless to me to be in a profession where I was just going to be cast all the time as the same kind of stereotypic character, you know, and to be defined in that way when that's not me. You know. And so I think it was 1973 when I decided, that's it. The same for me. No, I'm not going down this road.
No. Yeah, I think a lot of actors, you know, there's very few actors, I think, that will have it as a lifelong profession, because it's such a difficult one. So I can understand why people like yourself think, well, let's try something else, or maybe they become directors, or, you know, they try another aspect of it. You obviously have come back to acting here and there. Was it always the case of if the phone rang and it was a good offer, you'd want to do it?
I beg your pardon? Say that
Oh,
again.
sorry. So although you stepped away from acting into teaching, you did still do various roles. So was it a case of if the phone rang and it was a good role, you jumped at the chance?
Well, I think what happened was when I think it was when I got to retirement age in adult education, because I was freelance. I was all over the place. I was teaching at Contis Stage School. I was teaching at the City Literary Institute. I was teaching at Alra. I was teaching at RADA. I was teaching all over the place, right? All with theatre skills, and particularly with voice, because I'd had a training in voice with Kristen Linklater, who'd been my voice teacher at Lambda, and the Arts Council brought her back from America to train some of us up, because that particular method of teaching voice had left this country, and so the Arts Council wanted it back, and so they brought her back to train some of us up. And it was during a class where I was teaching voice, and on my breathing center, and I just felt something magical happen. It was as if my solar plexus had been like that, and it just sort of came together. And I thought, my God, this is it. This is it. This is what I want to do. I want to do this. And that became my passion then. It took place of acting. And then when I came to retirement age, I thought, well, what can I do now? Because I'm obviously not ready to retire, so I don't quite know what to do now. And one of some of the students that I'd taught had opened up an agency, a co-op agency called Rosebery. And I thought to myself, oh, that would be interesting to see what it's like from an agent's point of view, right? But you had to audition for it. So I had to audition to my ex-students in order to be able to qualify for a part in their agency. And I'm very glad I did it, because they were very patient with me when it came to techie stuff, because I wasn't very good at well, I didn't know anything about it. And they taught me all of that. They taught me how to use a computer, and I'd be stuck now if I hadn't done that. I wouldn't have known one end of a computer from another. I wouldn't have even known I owned one. Yeah. Because I would think, oh, I don't, no. But at least I'm kind of, I'm not ahead of the game, but I'm at least, keeping up. Keeping up, which I wouldn't have done if I hadn't have been part of that agency. No. And they sent me up for roles, and of course I was there in that capacity. And it was very, very interesting. Then, having spent all those years getting the potential out of other people, to them having to go full circle, turn around and being, that was hard. That was very hard. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. One of your later acting roles was an episode of Bad Education. Was that was that quite fun to do?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was lovely to. It was lovely. Yeah, it was very. Yeah. Very there again. You see, I had seen that kind of a character. I'd seen that kind of a character played what I considered to be very badly. And I thought to myself, I've got to find a way of playing this so that it's brave.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
If it's not brave, it's not going to work. So I had to make that conscious decision that I was going to be really bold with it, you know.
Yeah. I wanted to just ask you, do you have a couple of brief highlights from your theatre work that you're particularly proud of, any particular roles or productions?
Yeah, I mean, I loved playing the role in a Bertolt Brecht play called Drums in the Night. It was an adaptation by C.P. Taylor, who was a huge writer at that time. And it was the part of, she was a nightclub singer, and I had a long cigarette holder out here with a cigarette on the end, and I had to sing and a feather boa and a 30s dress, and my hair all done up with a tortoiseshell sort of comb, and a rose at crutch level, and I had to stand by the piano with a cigarette, and I had to sing this song, right? But it wasn't singing like a melodious singing. It was more like what they call Schlinkenspiel. It was sort of like it was talks, a bit like Rex Harrison did in My Fair Lady. It's talk singing, right? Talk singing. So you sing according to the rhythm, right? But you're not exactly singing, yeah. And then in the second half, she pulls the comb out, the hair comes down, because I had very long hair then. The hair comes down, right? And I pick up the gun and I become the revolutionary. And then I sing the song of Rosa Luxemburg, right? And we played that at the Traverse Theatre at the Edinburgh Festival when it was in the old quarters in the Grassmarket. And the characters that you used to see there, and it was there were something like, you could be playing at 2 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 7 o'clock in the evening. You were all at different times, you know. There was about 5 shows a day, and the turnaround of all the seats to accommodate the different production.
Yeah. And
then we played Hampstead Theatre Club after that. We came down from Edinburgh, and I loved that role. I loved it. In fact, when I auditioned for that, and I hate to sound like I'm blowing my own trumpet, but when I auditioned for that at Hampstead Theatre, the director, Roland Rees, cancelled all the auditions after he'd seen me.
Yeah. That's a high compliment, isn't it? Yeah, high praise. Yeah. Just to sort of finish off, I was just there is one bit I noticed on watching Golden Eggs about 22 minutes in. So if anybody wants to have a look at it later, they can. Honor Blackman is talking to Patrick McNee, and you can see she doesn't crack up. You can see she's sort of starting to laugh a little bit, and then she reins it back in, and it comes across as character, but I think you can tell it's a natural response to the dialogue and Patrick's delivery. Did you ever have any close calls like that where you almost got the giggles on stage or on TV?
Oh, they played terrible tricks on you. Terrible tricks. I mean, there was one in Softly Softly Task Force when an actor, I can't remember his name now, was playing a police officer, and he had to show me his identity thing, and he showed, this was during the rehearsal bit, fortunately. But once they played a trick like that on you in rehearsal, when it comes to do the actual take, you remember that when you come to that, you know, and you have to really control yourself, because he showed me his identity thing, and he put something very rude on it, right? And I looked at it, and of course my expression when I looked at it obviously wasn't the expression it should have been, right? And he was giggling when he did it, and when it came to the actual take, it was a very, very close moment for me, because I remembered the rehearsal. You see, and actors can be very naughty like that. They can do all kinds of things to sort of, you know, make you corpse, what we call corpsing, you know.
And I suppose a lot of the time it might be maybe on a long theatre run, it stops the boredom setting in. It keeps, and also it's good relationship builder with fellow cast. You can see why people might sort of, you know, want to play practical jokes, or, you know, it sounds like a
and some of the best of people do it. But it's very naughty.
I was wondering, so of the 2 episodes of the Avengers that still exist, which is your favorite?
Out of what?
Out of the Golden Eggs and Murdersville, do you prefer one or the other, or I suppose it might be like chalk and cheese, but
not really. No, I don't have any real preference for either of them, really. They were just jobs. They were just work. It was just work.
And when you watch yourself from all those years ago, is it like watching somebody else, or? It is.
Yes. I hardly recognize who that person is.
And I just wondered one person I wanted to mention, because you did refer to her earlier, Malu Pantra, who was in
Malu Pantera.
Yes. What was she like?
She was sweet. She was a very charming young woman. I remember having drinks with her in the bar and stuff. And that was the other thing that was a real pain in the neck as well, was the fact that because actors usually got all the sort of celeb kind of treatment, right? But they only worked once in a goddamn blue moon. They needed to be given a little bit of a perk, you know. But all the technicians used to be dead jealous of this. So to keep on the good side, you had to buy them drinks in the bar out of your hard-earned, you know, fee, right? Keep them happy, right? And but they were in regular work, you know, and picking up regular money but it was seen to be the thing to do, you know. You bought the technicians a drink in the bar because you knew you'd get a good shot if you did that, you know. That sort of thing.
Did you like, because Avengers was shot at Elstree Studios, Boyne Wood? Was Elstree a nice studio to work in?
Yes, I liked Elstree a lot. I was there for several things, and I can't remember what the other things were now. Oh, Jekyll and Hyde. I was there for Jekyll and Hyde. Was I there for Murdersville?
Well, Murdersville, the Avengers at the time was shot at Elstree, so any interiors, absolutely, it would be Elstree that they did. Of course, there's location work as well, but it was all based at Elstree at that time. So you would have the Avengers, then you'd have the Saint, Roger Moore on the other side of the studio, and So it seemed like quite a nice time to be at Elstree.
Yes, I thought it was a lovely studio. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I remember when I was in makeup for Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, the guy was making me up, and Ralph Bates came to the door and said, I've come for makeup. And they said, you can't come in. He said, I'm making Irene Bradshaw up. And he went, oh, not the Irene Bradshaw, it can't be her. Oh, it's not her, is it? And I thought, what's this? Is this some kind of a piss take or something? You know, what's going on? And when I went into the studio, he said, oh, take my seat in that. And I thought, what is this? You know, and it turns out that he was a student at Colchester Rep when I was leading lady. And he used to stand in the wings every night looking at me going, oh, isn't she wonderful? Isn't And then that time later, the tables have totally turned and he's leading man. Yeah, I thought it was really funny. Yeah.
Because Ralph Bates, a lot of cult TV know him for, he did a Persuaders episode, the Roger Moore, Tony Curtis series. Yeah. Again, that's has a huge following, and Ralph Bates did guest star in one of those. So he sounds like he was a very, you know, lovely person. Yeah, a
very nice person, and again a real gentleman, a lovely person. Lovely. Yeah.
And my my last thought on the Avengers, I was just wondering how Ian Hendry and Patrick McNee got on. Did Patrick get on well with Ian Hendry?
I would imagine that Patrick was the sort of person that got on well with everybody. I would have thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I can't say. I wasn't there in any of their private moments. So how do I know? I mean, I don't know. But they certainly seemed to, from what I saw of them. And I would have thought that Patrick was the sort of person that you couldn't not get on with. He was so sociable. I mean, he spoke to everybody, you know. I mean, there was no I'm the star of the thing or anything like that. It was all, you know, you sat in the same settee, you chatted to each other, you know, it was
yeah. Because I suppose for another actor,
not to like, you know.
Yeah, I suppose for other actors, it might have been a bit disconcerting being in a show where your co-star is constantly changing, but he seemed to love being with Honor and was very sad when she went, and loved Diana and loved Linda and Joanna and Gareth. So he was always, I think, as you say, very sort of.
He had that ability. He had that ability, and I would have thought, on a show like that, where there were all those changes and stuff like that, that kind of flexibility was really, really necessary to keep it going.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Really necessary. If you'd have had any prima donna on that, it would not have worked. It wouldn't have worked.
No. And obviously carrying the show as well, and being, you know, the. Did you ever work at Pinewood Studios?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Was that again a nice studio to work in, nice atmosphere?
I can't even remember what it was. I can just remember it was a hellish place to get to.
It's not that easy, is it?
No, I mean, when I was at Elstree, I was living in West Hampstead, so it was there was the overground, and you were there in two
more accessible.
Yeah, two shapes of a stick. You were there, you know. But Pinewood was a real headache to get to.
I imagine there's very few unglamorous drives.
Oh, I know what I was there for. I was there for Oliver, the film of Oliver.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah. Because I won't go into that, but that's a very long story. But I ended up playing one of the fishwives on the fish stall on the consider yourself number. Consider yourself, and flapping fish, you know.
Yes.
And and I think eventually that scene, it was in the main release of it, but I think when they started years later to shorten that scene, because it did go on forever, that number, I think that scene got cut. But it wasn't, it was in the original, but later on they started cutting scenes.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, because I remember the last time I looked, I couldn't see it, and I thought, where's it gone, you know? And then I thought, oh yes, I remember reading somewhere that they thought that the consider yourself number went on for too long.
Ah, right.
So they cut some of it.
Do you remember Ron Moody?
Do I remember what?
Ron Moody, who played Fagin in that one. Was that the Ron Moody one?
Yeah.
Did you encounter Ron Moody?
No. I was oh gosh, memories now. Because I was put up for the part of Nancy originally.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I ended up, I remember when I think it was Jenny Rice, I was the casting director, and she, I rang her up and I said, look, I said, there must be something on this film for me. I said, I can't be considered for playing Nancy and then not be offered anything. She said, I didn't think you would want to take a smaller role after that. So I said, I'm an actress, just, you know, I need work. Give me some work.
Yeah.
And so she said, well, if you want to go and meet Sir Carol Reed in this group audition, you can go. So I went along, and the guy who was doing the I don't know, I can't remember, one of the organisers or something, he went up to Carol Reed and said, Donald Aubrey gave her 14 auditions for Nancy, for the part of Nancy. He thought, well, who am I to argue with Donald Aubrey? Yeah, so I ended up getting this titchy role, but it was already cast anyway, because of backing the money and all the rest of it. It was already cast. So I don't know why they bothered doing auditions, you know, for it. Well, not audition interview.
Yeah,
and they knew who was going to play it. They knew who was going to play it.
Sounds like they wanted a backup or something, just in case negotiations fell through.
Sorry?
It sounds like they might have wanted a backup in case negotiations fell through, or
there would be nothing like that. Not in that case, no. Not at all. Not at all. No. I think that Aubrey originally wanted Georgia Brown to play it because she made the role. And when I auditioned for the tour of it, he said, I haven't met anybody since Georgia that has moved me as much as you have.
And what was Carol Reed like, the director?
Well, he didn't really. I mean, unless you were playing a leading role, you wouldn't know, would you? I mean, we were all sort of.
He was just
at a distance, you know.
He was doing in the shadows, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't. I mean, I remember I'd just moved into my flat. I'd just bought my flat, and I had a mortgage, and we were given 3 weeks off for, I don't know, I can't remember what, they had to shoot something else or something. We were given 3 weeks off and we were given a retainer fee so that we didn't work anywhere else. And I can remember sitting in my bath and thinking, gosh, I'm being paid to have a bath. I thought, well, that's all right.
Yes, nice feeling, I imagine. Yeah. Well, you worked with Peter Hammond twice on the Avengers, and you said you liked Peter Hammond. Would you say that Peter Hammond was an actor's director? Was he quite sort of, because do you think he got on well with the actors, Peter Hammond?
I think it was mixed, very mixed, because he was very he was extremely highly strung, and I think he knew what he wanted, and he wanted to get from the players the way he saw the production, the way he saw it, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that worked, and sometimes it didn't.
Yeah.
But he was very, very very, very strong-minded. Let's put it like that. Had to be the way he wanted it to be.
Oh yeah, yeah. And when you were doing live TV, did you ever have any issues where the camera got in the way, or say a door wouldn't open, anything that kind of went technically wrong on a live record?
Well, on
I think just generally speaking, really.
Generally speaking.
Yeah. Anything that sticks out.
No, I don't recall anything like that. I don't recall it. I just remember, like the issue I told you about when the makeup lady wasn't there with the blood and sort of stuff like that, and you had to think fast and think, where did she put it, and do it yourself and make sure you got back there in time for your cue, because if you missed that cue,
You had to be.
I can't think what she was doing. She must have been having a chin wag with somebody or something, and just totally forgotten, But by and large, in those early days, you just didn't mess up.
No.
Or you didn't. If you did, you didn't work again. That was it.
So as long as you were on your toes, it would all kind of go pretty well. And
mostly people were very wound up to getting it right,
Yeah. Because you would rehearse, was it 4 days in the week, and then record a dress rehearsal and technical?
I can't remember. I remember with United it was bi-weekly, and I remember we rehearsed for about 3 days, and then did one, and then rehearsed again for 3 days, and we did the whole thing on one day, or all the tech runs on one day or something. I can't remember now, but it was it wasn't a long time, let's put it that way. You had to get it together pretty fast.
Yeah.
And
there was, of course, an urgency in getting it all recorded, because back in those days you had to lights off at 10 o'clock, wasn't it, because of the union regulations, and you couldn't do overtime or overrun.
I remember that now. Yeah, I remember you couldn't touch anything that say the props man was in charge of. If you touched his props, you were in real trouble, right? You you could, because of all the union laws and that, you know.
Yeah.
So you had to wait, even though you knew you could just pick it up like that, you know, and no, you couldn't do it. You did your bit, the props man did their bit, the makeup lady did her bit, the cameras did their bit, and you never crossed over, you never crossed the line.
Yeah. My final question before I let you go, what do you have a favorite project in your career, and if so, why?
Do I have a favorite?
A favorite project in your career, a favorite role or production of...
I think the one that I mentioned, the drums in the night with Bertolt Brecht, I think that stands out for me.
Yeah.
And all my days in rep were wonderful days. And also when I first left drama school, I was picked up by the Arts Council of Great Britain to play in their tour of Peer Gynt by Henri Gibson. And what was the other one? Oh, it was Shakespeare, and it's gone up my head. That wasn't The Tempest, it was, oh, I can't remember now. Anyway, they picked me up to play in these plays, and I wasn't supposed to be given a leading role because the Arts Council had this thing that you didn't give a leading role to somebody who hadn't got the experience, right?
Yeah.
So you could play an ASM, assistant stage manager, and you could play a small role, like a crowd role or something like that. But you couldn't play a leading role.
Yeah.
And in those days, actors were actors, singers were singers, and dancers were dancers. And when it came to casting the role of Anitra, she had to be able to dance as well as act. And when I was auditioned because I was a trained dancer. I'd been dancing since I was this high. And the director said to me, now, I can't choreograph this number because I don't know anything about dancing. He said, now, you wouldn't lie to me, would you? He said, you can dance and you could choreograph your own number. I said, oh, do us a favor. Come on, you've either got it or you haven't. And let's face it, I've got it.
Yeah, good for you.
Absolutely. His jaw dropped open. And he said, well, I'll have to trust you. You've got it then, you know. And I got to play a leading role on my chin, you know, because I could dance and because I could choreograph my own number. Otherwise, the Arts Council would have never have given me that role.
Yeah.
And when we went into production, Lynn Redgrave, who'd only just done a course in cordon bleu cooking, was cast as the Green Woman. And when the Arts Council found out, and we were in rehearsal, well into rehearsal, they said, no way, she's going to come out. She's not playing that. She hasn't even been to drama school. And so they had to cast within the company. So I ended up with 2 leading roles. The Green Woman and Anitra. And I must say, I did enjoy doing that, because when we were at Cambridge, playing at the Art Theatre in Cambridge, I was staying in a boarding house where they weren't supposed to have young ladies because they had undergraduates there.
Oh, yeah.
But she took pity on me because I said, I can't find anywhere to live. And so she said, all right, I'll take you. She said, but you must keep this under your hat, you know. Well, word got out because they all the undergraduates saw my picture outside the theatre. And they came down to breakfast one day. The whole room was full of undergraduates, all trying to get a glimpse, right? And they showed me around Cambridge University. One took me punting one day, another showed me around the different halls of the university. Had a ball, had an absolute ball, because because they all found out. They saw this picture of me doing the dance of the Seven Veils. You know? It was hysterical. They were very fun days, those early days. Really fun.
Yes, that sounds wonderful. Did you do a lot of Shakespeare during your theatre days?
I did Shakespeare there, and I did Shakespeare at the Nottingham Playhouse when I was at the Nottingham Playhouse. But I didn't do much after that. I think a lot of actors feel like they should do more Shakespeare than perhaps they do, but it's sort of, again, that sort of what you said about commercials. You know, Shakespeare actors are seen as more legitimate perhaps than people who don't do Shakespeare. Did you kind of feel that even in theatre there was kind of a hierarchy in terms of what productions you did or your standing, or was it a bit informal? No, I mean, if you were cast in the company, you got to play everything.
Yeah.
You got to play, you know, whatever the director was producing, whatever they were putting off. Obviously, the director cast it according to your suitability at casting. You know.
Yeah. So it's a very nice training ground because you could do all roles, and it wasn't
got to play everything. You got to play everything. You sort of but you were categorized up to a certain point. I mean, for instance, in my spotlight picture, I was categorized as junior character. I was never categorized as leading lady, and I was never categorized as ingenue. Although when I was at Colchester, I played leading lady.
Right.
I did play leading lady, but mostly I was whatever character was going. I was what they call a character actress. I was. Yeah.
Well, I think it's probably a lovely place to end it. Thank you, Irene, for such a wonderful conversation. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I don't think so. I've got a bit of a cold. I keep sniffing all the time. I've got a bit of a cold.
Yes, a lot of things going around at the moment, aren't there? But I've really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you very much for joining me.
Great pleasure. Thank you very much for asking.
And very happy birthday for tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'll enjoy that.
Well, have a lovely one. You got any plans or anything? You
Yes, I'm being taken out by 2 ex-students. They're coming to pick me up, and they're going to take me for dinner in a very posh restaurant. And they're treating me.
Very nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I've got all my cards stashed up here because I obviously don't want to open them till the day, but they arrived early. And I've got a present over there that I can look forward to opening tomorrow from my nephew and his wife and kids. And yes, no doubt my birthday normally goes on for about a week to 10 days because there's always things coming in late. I usually get a huge bouquet of flowers from an ex-student from adult education. They sent me flowers on my birthday every year for the last 15 years, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must try and do that, spread my birthday out over a week or so. It sounds, because sometimes you feel a bit depressed once your day's over, but if it's a longer period of time, that sounds a bit nicer.
Yes, it goes on. I mean, my nephew's driving up from Derby with the kids and his wife on the 23rd, and my other nephew they're all gonna come and pick me up and take me out for dinner on the 23rd. So it'll just go on for about a week to 10 days until it peters out, you know.
But yeah, we'll have a lovely time, enjoy every moment of it, and thank you very much for joining me. It's been really, really fun.
Pleasure. Bye now.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.